Welcome, everyone. Can't believe we're here, another edition of Lab Manager Academy webinar. It's a brainchild of Lab Manager Magazine. My name is Jeff Tobe. I'd like to welcome everybody. I hope you're surviving the heat in certain parts of the U.S. and Canada. I'm excited to say that with your feedback, these webinars just keep getting better and better. I know you're going to love today's webinar, and I hope that those of you who are loyal participants would agree that they're just getting better. Please let us know if there are any topics you'd like to see addressed in upcoming sessions. We want to make sure that you're getting what you need out of these sessions. Just email me directly at jeff@jefftobe.com. Before we go any further, I'd like to introduce our gracious and generous sponsor, Fran Ebert. Fran?
Thank you, Jeff. We are very proud to sponsor such a valuable educational webinar series for lab managers. I'm especially looking forward to today's topic on effectively growing your key talent because we realize that employees are the most valuable asset in any lab. To enable your talent to remain focused on their core priorities, we've developed our new service brand, Unity Lab Services, specifically to provide tools that maximize your lab workflow and free up precious work time by decreasing the burden of service responsibilities that need to be managed by your talent. We recognize, of course, that lab managers are asked to balance a wide variety of activities to achieve the best results within a lab. And our vision is a lab where your teams are able to work on top priorities and non-core work is streamlined. Our solutions can enable your lab to leverage our best practices and processes from over 100 years of experience in thousands of labs and eliminate time and trial and error. We can also help you streamline supply management. And to eliminate this time and supply ordering process, our teams can set up and manage well-stocked, well-organized supply rooms located close to point of use. In addition, we can streamline instrument and equipment service management so that with one call, you can request service on any instrument or equipment regardless of manufacturer and let our team handle the scheduling, following up, and on-site hosting of a service provider. As you can see on your screen, we categorize these services into 4 enterprise service product lines that are offered at the lab, site, or enterprise level. Our services are vendor agnostic, which means that we provide service solutions for all the equipment in a lab, regardless of manufacturer, to provide service solutions without boundaries. And our experienced team of multi-vendor service engineers are expanding daily. You can see that this is consulting services, supply management services, asset management services, and scientific support services, which, as I said, we categorize as our enterprise services. In addition, we do have our traditional instrument level service offerings, which you can see on the left, support plans, parts and consumables, training services, and compliance services, again, offered without boundaries across systems of any maker manufacturer. We'd be very happy to talk to you about our service solutions that can save you time and enable your talent to focus on top priorities, all while controlling costs. To learn more, visit www.unitylabservices.com and please enjoy today's webinar.
Thanks so much, Fran. We would be lost without Unity Lab Services, so please check out their website and all their services. Today's webinar is effectively growing your key talent. Are you sunlight and water or manure? Once again, we've outdone ourselves with over 700 registrants. Before I introduce our presenter, please know that she welcomes your questions throughout her presentation. And many of you know the drill, but those joining us for the first time, just type in your query in the chat box, and we'll try to get to it during our short time together. If we don't get to it, our speaker has agreed that she'll take the questions offline, and she'll answer you privately. So we will get to every question. Also, I want to make sure that everyone has access to the webinar after the fact. So every webinar is posted up on the web about 1 week after airing, so you can get the entire presentation if you like. If you need to write this down, today's address for today's webinar, is www.labmanager.com/growing. That's www.labmanager.com/growing, Growing. Or just go to the labmanager.com website, click on webcasts and podcasts to get all of the presentations. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. When Rebecca Morgan talks, even Oprah listens. As a best-selling author, Rebecca appeared on the Oprah Show. She's been featured as a workforce effectiveness expert in other international media. She's the founder of Morgan Seminar Group in San Jose, California, and since 1980, Rebecca has traveled internationally to work with some of the world's best organizations. She's retained as the Workplace Effectiveness Spokesperson for Division of Microsoft. Rebecca's authored 20 popular books and co-authored 5 others. Her books have been published in 9 languages. In fact, she's offered to give you one of her books free. Stay tuned for that. She is only the 15th person in the world to earn both the designation of Certified Speaking Professional, CSP, as well as Certified Management Consultant. These are the highest earned designations conferred by the respective professional associations. Today, Rebecca is going to share effectively growing your talent. Are you sunlight and water or just manure? Please help me welcome Rebecca Morgan.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks so much for the great introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be with you today and share some of my ideas from 32 years in the people development business and what makes organizations work better and some of the things that I found don't make them better, which is why we're using the growing metaphor here. And a lot of organizations have a lot of sunlight and water, but have a lot of manure as well. So we'll talk about how to make sure that you and your department, you and your staff have a very symbiotic relationship and keep it growing rather than squashing it. So let me quickly go over the agenda, and then I've got a couple of quick polls so that I can understand a little bit better about you all. So I understand that some of you are sitting around a table with a speakerphone. So if you could just quickly designate someone to answer the poll questions for you, that would be great. That would help me understand a little bit more about my audience, although I was briefed ahead of time. So let's quickly go over what we are going to cover. First of all, we're going to talk about why your best employees may be ready to leave and your best customers might go with them. So I know that you may be one of those employees, and obviously I'm not going to do anything to ask you to raise your hand if you are, but if you are thinking of leaving, maybe we'll talk about some things that you and your manager could do to make sure that you stay around, and managers will talk about things that you can do to have those top employees stick around and be with you a long time. We're going to talk about why maintaining the status quo means you're losing ground, especially in this market, in this economy. We'll also discuss how to get the highest return on investment from any development effort, whether you are a participant or whether you are the manager, how to make sure that any development that you are involved with gets the highest payoff. And the last thing we'll talk about in our time is how you can develop your people or your team with limited or no budget. I've got 10 ideas. I'll share as many as I can, and the rest will be provided in that free ebook that we talked about, and I'll explain to you how you can get that one as we go along. So we're ready for our first poll. So if you could designate your person that's going to answer this, and have one of you fill in on the screen, helping me understand who you are. Are you the executive in your organization? Are you a manager, or are you an individual contributor or frontline? If you could quickly just respond to that, that would be great. Oh, good. A lot of you are answering quickly. I'm impressed at how quick you all are. So we're going to give you about 5 more seconds. Boy, Jeff, this is a great group. Almost everyone has voted, which is fabulous. So you're still voting, so I'll just leave it open another moment or two. I appreciate your responsiveness. Like I said, we'll have 3 really quick ones in a row. And it looks like everybody who has voted is going to vote. So let me close the poll. And it looks like that 4% of you are the executives, 73% are managers, and 23% of the frontline or individual contributors, which helps me understand. So based on this result, I'm going to focus most of my comments on the manager level, but if you're an individual contributor, I will have some comments that I think are relevant to you. So stay tuned, and hopefully it will create some lively conversation for your group after we are done. Okay, my next poll is around who is in your organization. So if you could again quickly tell me how many, and by organization, why don't you say your whole company? That would be helpful to me. So how many of you are in the 1 to 10 route? Again, you guys are so quick. I'm impressed. I do this program a lot for a lot of different industries, and let me tell you, you guys get the gold star for voting quickly. So I'm impressed. Okay, everybody who was going to vote has voted. So it looks like the majority of you are over 1,000 employees. About a third of you are 101 to 1,000. So we're looking at some good size groups. And again, not that there isn't something relevant for those of you in the 1 to 100 group, but I'll just plan to focus my comments on the larger groups. And the last quick poll to help me understand you a little bit more is helping me understand who, what's your biggest challenge. So quickly vote for that. That would be great. So are you too busy to do any sort of development? You have no approval for anything but technical training, or your people, your staff don't seem motivated to learn and grow? Which one is appropriate for your situation? Okay, we're about 5 seconds away from closing the poll. Right now it seems like you're all too busy to do any development, which is really common, especially in this economy. People are saying we're just barely keeping our heads above water, let alone having any time to develop. Okay, everybody who voted did vote. So almost half of you say that that is true for you, and then the others split between no approval and people don't seem to be motivated. All right, so let me share some ideas that may help you find some time to do development and get some approval and make sure that people are motivated. All right, so as I mentioned, my premise is this gardening metaphor that we'll use throughout, and in many organizations, the managers are sunlight and water, meaning that they know how to nurture, they know how to grow, they know how to improve people's skill sets and encourage them to try new things, and yet I think we've all experienced a manager who was just manure. They just were unpleasant to be around, they were not helpful, and for our discussion today, we're going to define manure differently than fertilizer, because manure just lumped on your plants is not usually very good unless it's mixed with other things, and that's fertilizer, which is good. So we're going to use manure for not good and fertilizer for good. My perspective is that a manager's job is really, in a large part, the chief people gardener. That a manager's job is really to grow your people so that they are ready for the next challenges. I did a recent project with the third largest software company in the world, and my job was to develop the supervisors to become managers. And the people that these supervisors reported to all paid for the sessions out of their own departmental budget, and that was a bit of an anomaly in my 3 decades in this business. So I asked them why they were so committed that they paid for it out of their own departmental budget versus out of HR, and they said, we want to be able to move on, and we can't move on unless there is someone ready to take our place. Also, they said, I can delegate more, I can give more responsibility to this next group if they are trained well and understand how to manage and delegate on their own than if they don't. So that was a good example, I thought, of these higher level managers saying, I need to develop my folks, both from a selfish point of view, where that I can delegate more and I can be promoted, but also from a departmental point of view, in that we're going to run much more effectively. People are going to get their questions answered more quickly because they're not waiting for me to make a decision all the time. So they really took on this metaphor of being a people gardener. Now, some of you that, oh, and by the way, make sure if you have any questions as we go throughout that you post those in the questions box, and we'll pause periodically to answer those for you. So some of you may be familiar with a book that came out a while ago, but the premises are still applicable. It's called First Break All the Rules, and it's based on a study by the Gallup organization of over 80,000 respondents, and they looked at what made high performers, the stellar employees, stay at an organization and what made them leave. So one of the questions they asked was, is there someone at work who encourages my development? So I want you to actually think about that for yourself and think about, is there someone at work in the last 6 months who has encouraged your development? So if you're in a group setting, do a quick little poll of hands and then just respond with what you think is the majority. In the last 6 months, someone at work has encouraged my development. It means encouraged me to grow and learn some new skills. So if you could answer that as you are very quickly, that's great. And I'm looking at the results as they're coming in, and it looks like you all are working for some very great organizations because the majority of you are saying yes, and I'll show you that poll in just about 2 seconds. I'm going to close the poll and show you what you all answered. So look at that. That's impressive. I will tell you that when I do this for other organizations, not half of the people say yes. So give yourselves a little pat on the back that you're already doing some good things because people are encouraging development. And then there's another 29% that say, no, no one has encouraged my development. And frankly, this last one is usually what the majority says, not often enough. And you think, well, we're professionals, we're adults, we don't really need a lot of pat on the backs. But the truth is that we do, or at least we appreciate it. Maybe we don't need it, but we certainly appreciate it when someone does say, hey, I really appreciate that extra work you did. I really appreciate you learning that new skill. That you feel appreciated is one of the ways that these top performers stick around, is when they know that someone appreciates what they do. And not that you have to do it every day, but certainly maybe more often than you're currently doing it if you're in a managerial position. All right, the next question that they asked that I will also see how you respond is, in the last 6 months, has someone at work talked about my progress? So let me give you the poll for that. So this is a little different. It's like, have they looked at your career path? Have they looked at your development plan and talked specifically about what you want or need to learn and helped you see what you need to do to improve getting your goals? All right, again, you're answering quickly. Great. How about 3 more seconds, and then we'll close the poll. Okay, most of you have voted, which is great. I'm going to close the poll now and show you the results. So yes, again, very great that the majority said yes, but neck and neck there is no. So half, about, you're about evenly split there with again 12% saying not often enough. In other words, most people would like to know what results they're creating and how they could do better. And some of you are saying, I don't get that results enough. And about, you're evenly split between the yes and the no, pretty darn close. All right, and the third question I'm going to ask you, and based on this book and get your results, is this last year I've had opportunities at work to learn and grow. So if someone at work said, here's an opportunity to get you to grow. When I had a real job years and years and years ago, my boss and I sat down and looked at what I needed to do to grow, and he then was proactive at finding opportunities to help me develop the skills and have the experiences that we decided would be good for me to go to the next level. And he was the best boss I ever had, and I really admired how he took an interest in my growth, which in some cases were selfish, and then as I grew, he also got to delegate more. But part of it was not selfish. Part of it was I got a sense that he really cared about me as an individual. Okay, we're about at the closing time here, so I'm going to close off the poll. and show you the results. And about 67% of you have had an opportunity to learn and grow. This is fabulous. 15% said no, and 18% said not enough. So there's still some room to develop there. But again, as a general rule, I'm impressed with your answers because that's very different than what I usually get when I lead this session for other people. Now, when there is no development or there's not enough encouragement to develop, then employees create this itch to move on. They say, I'm not growing here. I need to grow to achieve my career goals, and so what else is out there? And what we've seen in the last few years is there's this pent-up need or pent-up desire to move on to another place, not lonely place, sorry. And yet the market hasn't been really encouraging that. And so as the market improves, as it has in some sectors, there's going to be a bit of a brain drain. There is going to be some situations where people have more opportunities. So if you're the manager and you want to hang on to those star people that are sitting around that table with you, what can you do to make sure that they don't have that itch to move on? And development is one of those pieces. So I'm going to go into some specific ways that the gardener and manager can grow their business. But Jeff, I'm going to pause here and just see if there's any questions about any of the polls or any of the questions that we've covered so far. So probably not, but I'm going to pause just in case. So Jeff, you want to see if there's any
We need people we need people to wake up a little bit. Here's one. What's the biggest problem you see with leaders not growing their staff?
Well, the biggest problem is they are going to leave. They're going to go somewhere else, or they're going to be like those people that we all have experienced on the job who've really quit, but they show up every day. You know those people. And so they're going to be minimally productive, but their heart is not in it. They're going to do just enough to keep their job, but they're going to be actively looking at other places. So you may, as a manager, not really understand the problem unless you sit down and have a conversation with them, and unless they feel safe enough to be able to say, I feel like I'm just not growing here. I feel like I need to develop more. So as the manager, you actually need to probe using that question is how can I help you be re-engaged? How can I help you get re-excited about the opportunities that are available right now? So any other questions?
Yeah, one more.
Okay. We'll keep
some staff don't know what they need to grow. So what do we do with them?
Well, that's a very good question. As the manager, you have a sense of what they need to do to grow to the next level. And so if they don't know, that's really where you can step in and help them know, or arrange for them to have a conversation with someone either in your organization or outside your organization who could offer some even minimal mentoring. And sometimes it is good for you to connect them to someone outside your organization to talk about their career path and what could be needed, because they're going to be more comfortable, more honest with that person than they might be with someone internally. So there's a couple of ideas to help those people who really don't know. I think you could help them and draw them out.
Great.
Okay.
How about one more quick one? You want to wait?
Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead.
How do I convince my manager to send me to professional development when budgets are tight?
Okay. In fact, that's an excellent question. Can we hold that question, because I'm going to cover some inexpensive ways to be developed, which I know is not exactly your question, but I think it might help along the way. So if we could hold that and come back to it if I don't answer it by the end. So let me go
Don't forget to ask me questions.
Yes. Well, Jeff, they are very awake by how quickly they voted for the polls. So they're with us. They just don't have questions at this point, which is fine. Now, this next section I'm going to do about how a manager can grow the staff is also included in my book by the same title as this session, called Grow Your Key Talent, and that's available for all of you for free. It's on my website, RebeccaMorgan.com. In the right-hand corner, there's a little place you can click and download it. So if you want to go through all of the things that we're going to talk about, plus some more. They're all in that book. So if you are actively taking notes, know that you don't need that. It's going to be all in the book. So what can you do to make sure your STAR staff talent grows? I can't read today. STAR talent grow. We're going to talk about the things. So we're using this gardening metaphor, which I know is a little silly, but I think it is applicable and it makes it a little fun. So if you were a gardener, before you planted anything, you would prepare the soil. You'd remove any rocks or obstacles, and if the earth wasn't tilled or augmented, you know, the seeds just won't sprout, or they'll be stunted, or they'll die. By the way, I am an avid gardener, so I was out gardening one day when I came up with this metaphor, and that's why you'll hear the gardening throughout. So if you're the manager, let's put it in that context, you need to prepare the environment. You make sure that learners have coverage for their responsibilities so they won't be interrupted during any professional development sessions, whether those are one-on-one mentoring sessions, whether those are classes, whether those are e-learning, or even if you send them off-site or to a conference, you don't want them feeling obligated to respond to phone and text unless it is an emergency. So you're preparing the environment so that the people will grow in the learning situation. And the second concept is, don't just scatter the seeds if you're the gardener, because much opportunity will be wasted. So in the manager's situation, you want to assure that the learners will flourish. So not all courses are good for all learners. Coming from the school system we have, typically we think, oh, I'll just send someone to a class or a seminar or a conference. But not all participants learn that way. Some participants learn better with one-on-one mentoring. Some learn by reading and then asking someone questions. You need to be discerning in what learning opportunities you match with your folks. Because when anyone can self-select a course based on what they think might be useful, the results may be unhappy participants or managers because they're not really selecting a situation that is best for their learning. And if you have someone who comes back after attending a conference or course and you say, what did you learn? And they don't have much to say, maybe it's they're unmotivated, maybe the conference wasn't the right fit, but maybe it's not the right learning environment for them. And so ask them how they have learned best in the past, and maybe, again, a different modality would work better for them. Then you, as a gardener, you would want to select the right plants. You want to understand what you want and choose the best plant for the job. So ground cover won't become a tree, and sometimes we put the wrong people in the wrong situation. So as a manager, you want to select the right learner. Don't try to fix someone's personality by sending them to training. And let me tell you, over the years, and Jeff probably had this too, we get people sent to our seminars and workshops and even my executive coaching. They want me to fix them. Well, if they're not a people person, they probably should not be in customer service. If they're not great with difficult situations, they maybe should not be a manager, because that's part of being a manager is you have to coach people when they screw up. So if the person isn't the right fit, then no matter what you do to train them or to develop them, it's not going to have the results that you want. So really look at, why am I trying to develop this person, and if it's a personality flaw or just a quirk, it doesn't even have to be a flaw, it's just not a good fit for what you're asking them to do with what they naturally like to do. And yes, we can all stretch and learn, of course, how to be more effective, but sometimes that stretching creates a lot of stress, which means that they're not going to be doing their job as well. As a gardener, you want to make sure you plant in the right season, because if you don't, you won't produce healthy plants. So I don't plant tomatoes in January here in California unless I'm have a greenhouse. You just want to make sure, on the manager side, make sure the timing is good. Is he or she motivated to learn right now, or too busy fighting fires? Because when you're distracted, it's just really hard to focus, because when you are learning something else, something new, it is a little stressful, and then when you need to implement that, you're concerned about, am I doing it right? What if I screw up? And so you need to be focused. And so it might not be the right time for them to go to that conference, go to that seminar, or have that mentoring. As a gardener, you want to fertilize, weed, and water regularly. And so you want to nurture them, in other words. And as the manager, you want to regularly reinforce and coach them. It's an ongoing activity. So even if someone comes back from a training or seminar or conference, you don't want to just say, how was it? And they go, it was fine, end of conversation. You want to find out what they learned and how they plan to implement it and what you can do to support them. And then, of course, you want to catch them trying new things, even if it isn't perfect. You want to encourage people to try new things. Because until you have a competency, you need to continually be conscious of weeding out the old, ineffective behaviors. And that takes some effort. And as a manager, you want to just applaud people for trying new things, even if they aren't successful at first. And that's why you're the chief gardener. You want to allow time to germinate the seeds. If you're the gardener, it takes time for the seeds to develop and grow. And for the manager, so it allows time to cement these new skills. It takes time. Now, some people will get it instantly, but most of us need a couple tries before we do it close to good, close to acceptable. And I know you know that old adage of practice makes perfect, but the truth is practice makes permanent. So you want to make sure that you're practicing in a way that's going to create competency, and that takes some consciousness and some willingness to fail. Because when you fail, you're trying something new, and you don't want to worry about getting zinged by your boss for trying something new and it not going well. So create a way to do that for yourself. Then you want to protect from the pests. I think that's self-explanatory in the gardener scenario. And the manager scenario, that means protect your learner from criticism. A new skill is likely not to be done particularly well the first few times. As I said, so be willing for it not to be perfect, and just to encourage them and give them kudos for trying, and give them some coaching on how they could do better the next time. Know when to transplant, because if a plant isn't doing well, it may be because the sun or the soil isn't right. So you've got to learn about the plant and determine when and where to plant them. Same with a person. Know when someone isn't doing well. It might be time to give them some new duties or transfer them. And then you want to finally celebrate the results. As a gardener, I pick my flowers, or I enjoy them in the garden. I love having my fresh vegetables from the garden, and I celebrate the work that it took to get there. So in growing people, you acknowledge the positive changes and celebrate the successes, because they've gone through some stress and some work to make this effort, and make sure that you know that they are appreciated and that trying new things is something that you value and you want to encourage. So, Jeff, I'm going to pause there and see if there's any questions about the growing metaphor and what can be done to grow people. Jeff? Okay, well, I don't hear Jeff, so I'm going to keep going because I don't know where he went.
Are you there?
You're on mute.
I couldn't get myself off mute.
Keep going.
Sorry about that.
Any questions about any of that segment?
Absolutely. Some staff don't know what they need to. Oh, I'm sorry. What if there's no opportunity for upward movement? How do you, as a manager, under these circumstances, still motivate your staff?
Well, maybe there's not opportunity for upward movement in terms of a position, but certainly there's upward movement in terms of skill sets. So I had people at some of the companies I've worked for who actually chose not to take a managerial position. They chose not to go to the next level, but they were still highly valued as individual contributors or at whatever manager level they were at. And so you can always improve people's skills, and you just obviously don't want to promise that they will be promoted if there's no opportunity in the near future for that to happen. But I think most people would still like to be developing their skills, and in some organizations you can go you can still get raises and bonuses within your current skills, your current level. So it would have to be dependent upon your situation. Oops. Jeff, anything else?
Yeah. What about managers not willing to help others development and grow because they're afraid of losing their own position?
Yeah. Well, that's sad, isn't it? Because the manager should be working on his or her own skill sets to grow and develop. And so I have had those situations where I had a boss once who was kind of threatened by me, and it didn't stop me from developing my skills, still improving, but it just meant I had to look somewhere else to be able to apply them, because I wasn't going to get promoted because that person was intimidated by me. Okay, anything else?
That's it for now. We got lots more, though, for the end. So.
Okay, we certainly do. We certainly do have lots more. So let's keep going, and I'll pause another time or two before we leave for our day. So maintaining status quo means you're losing ground. So there are 3 kinds of approaches to development, and I'll go through each one of these in some detail. This is, so the first one is compliance fix, the second one miracle fix, and then long-term development solution. So what I see often is there's a compliance fix, which means that some organization has required this development. So often it's safety training. I know in the labs there's a lot of lab safety training. There's, say, sexual harassment training. There's things that are mandated. And those usually last, an hour to a couple days. And you get, the benefit is you get to status it as accomplished, you get to tick it off the list, and the participants get at least some development. But the drawback is nothing usually changes, or not anything big changes. People have an awareness, and sometimes there's changes, but sometimes there's not. So it can be a waste of time and money, and the participants don't really feel they need the training, so they resist many of the key elements. So, I realize that a lot of organizations have to do those things, and you can make them interesting and engaging, and I help a lot of my clients do that. And yet you want to say, how can I keep those to the minimum, if at all possible? The second kind I call the miracle fix. And this is where somebody calls me in and says, I want you to, they don't say it quite this thoroughly, but this is what they're implying, I want you to fix my staff. I want you to fix this one person sometimes. And that's often an hour to a couple days, and it's either live training or e-training or webinars. It's short, so even if it doesn't work, your team hasn't wasted too much time, and they get at least some training. So the drawbacks, again, are often nothing changes, especially for the one person that they had this training for. They don't really see that they're the problem child, so they don't think that anything needs to shift. In fact, they think it's a total waste of time, as do other people who aren't the problem children. They know who the problem child is, and they're really just saying to the manager, if you just coach this person, then we wouldn't all have to waste our time going through this kind of miracle fix training, which really isn't applicable to the rest of us. But the common thing the manager says when he or she calls me in is, well, it doesn't hurt for everyone to have a refresher. And while I agree to some point, I think it does hurt if it's not considered relevant to them. If they don't see why they need to be spending that time away from their job, then it does hurt. People get demoralized. And my bias is toward the last one. Again, I've looked at many of my clients over the years and said what has really worked and what hasn't. And this is by far the thing that gets the highest return on investment. It's some sort of longer-term development solution. So it doesn't have to be a week-long in-person seminar. It could be webinars like we're all doing today, but over an extended period of time where there's homework in between and there's accountability to change some behaviors. And those are where I've seen the highest return on investment, because they're They're stretched out over time. People are engaged. People attend because they want to, or they're advised by their boss that this would be good for them with specific things the boss wants them to get out of it. And yes, it does take more time than a quick fix, although it doesn't have to. Like I said, if it's an hour once a week or an hour every 2 weeks, that can take less time than a 2 or 3 day seminar. But it does take support and accountability to each participant's manager. So it's a new way of looking at how do we develop our people. And yes, I admit sometimes it can cost more than a 1 or 2 day training, but the investment, the leverage is just tremendous over time. So I try to make sure when I'm advising my clients that we don't just do 1 or 2 day hits. We do something that's going to last. In fact, year-long programs are my preference. And then we can really see people develop over time because they're getting little chunks that they can go back and use and apply and get some feedback on. And then they come back and they get another little chunk. So I applaud you all for coming to this webinar because this is a little chunk that hopefully will shift some of your thinking about development, either your own development or your staff's development. All right, I want to do another quick poll here for you. If a participant doesn't get anything out of a training, it's the instructor's fault. So if you could quickly respond to that, that would be great. Oh, you're a very savvy audience, Jeff. We have a very savvy audience because they understand. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 more seconds. Okay, looks like everybody has voted that wants to vote, so I'm going to close the poll and show you. This also is very different than what I usually see. So usually people, it's about split. Some people say, about half people say yes, half people say no, but you all are very sophisticated and you realize that it is not all the instructor's fault. This is different than my real-world experience, too, in that most of the time when something goes awry, they blame the instructor, whether that's an internal instructor, an external instructor, or even the manager as instructor. So let me share with you the 3-legged stool for training success. So there's 3 components, and I'll go over each one. So the learner's manager, the learner, and the instructor or content provider are the 3 roles. So many of you are the managers, so let's go over your role first. So in order to get the highest ROI, you need to talk to the learner before any development effort to determine the areas of needed improvement. And by the way, this is also in the book that you can download as well, so you don't need to take notes if you don't want to. So you talk to them ahead of time. So you say, okay, we've got this conference coming up, we've got this training coming up. I'm going to meet with you and go over what I think would be good for you to focus on. What do I want you improving or honing or refining as a result of whatever development this is? And then you want to be clear on what you expect the learner to perform differently as a result of the development effort. And then you co-create those measures with the participant to determine if the learner successfully integrated those new skills or information. So, that's one of the biggest challenges with any sort of development is how do you know it works? Well, as the manager, you're going to set those measurables with the person before they even go to this session. And for our discussion today, let's just say it's a seminar or some sort of training. And then you want to encourage the learner to take charge of their learning by asking the questions they need. One of the things that irritates me the most is when someone writes on the evaluation, I wish Rebecca would have covered X. Well, what, your hands don't work? What, you can't open your mouth? So managers, make sure that you let your people know that you expect them to get their questions answered. And if that content provider can't answer the questions, they need to come back to you, and you need to help them source the answers for those questions. And then you want to talk to that person to make sure that they are clear on what you want. So that's before. So the learner before would do the mirror. So you're going to make a point of talking to your manager before you go to anything that is development, and you're going to talk about the agenda and what you want to get out of it and what he or she wants you to get out of it. And then you need to bring up, well, how will we know that this training was effective, and what you can show, what you expect to show as a result of that training to show it was effective. And of course, you need to complete any pre-work or homework that is done ahead of time. And the instructor ahead of time will be creating, hopefully, a stimulating, useful, and clear lesson, and planning the right exercises to help ensure that the information is absorbed and retained. And then during the session, so back to the manager, if you are in the actual session, which I actually encourage you to do as much as possible, then you need to be fully present. And it's really tempting to sit in the back and do your paperwork, do your email, look on your BlackBerry or iPhone, and yet the signal that that sends is that it's not that important for you to pay full attention to. So I know it's hard, I know it's time-consuming, but I really encourage you to be present. However, there is some caveats here. When I say be present, I don't mean take over the conversation or be combative with the instructor. I mean be present, ask good questions, encourage people, sit back actually when the instructor asks a question or in any sort of exercises. Don't take the lead, let them take the lead. This is a great way for you to hear what your people are thinking and how positive or negative they are about attaining the skills. I recently did this with a client where we had the director as well as all the staff sit in on the session, and she said it was so helpful for her to hear the comments of her people, and she then would pull aside some later for coaching because she saw that some of them were just not willing to change, not willing to learn some new skills, and she had to have conversations with them, and it was really very valuable for her to sit in. So the learner during, obviously you also want to be as attentive as possible, put your cell phones away, put your email away, etc. And the instructor has to be engaging. After, this is really critical, after the manager, you have to say, what did you learn? And what will you apply, and how will how will I help you apply this? So immediately after, you want to have a little 10-minute conversation with each of your people to have that conversation, and then you say, let's talk in a week, and let's set an appointment and see how you're doing on that and what else I could do to help support you. And then you say, let's talk in a month, and again have that conversation. Because if there's no follow-up, there's no accountability, then you're not likely to do anything differently. And the learner, you can also take the onus of that and say to your manager, let me report back to you immediately after the training, and then let's talk in a week, and I can tell you how it's going and see if there are any challenges. And then in a month, let me report what I actually did. And frankly, this is a way for you to get to brag on what you did. Okay, I'm going to scoot on because I'm looking at the time here, and we'll have some questions at the end. I want to talk about some low-cost development solutions for you. And so if you could quickly just take this poll, then it'll help me understand, and then we'll have a little time for questions at the end. Okay. I'm just telling you as they come in, it looks like about half of you have less than $100 a person. Wow. All right, well, I got some ideas for you that you can incorporate. So let's take 2 more seconds. Looks like everybody who's voted has voted. So let me share. So 50% have less than $100, and then 36, a little bit more, 15%. You all who answered in that 15%, look at how happy you should be, because look at the other of your professional colleagues, what they have to endure. Okay, so let me go through some specific ways, and again, these are in the Grow Your Key Talent book, RebeccaMorgan.com. Go there and download it. I'm only going to give you, I think, 5 or 6 today. There are 10 in the book, but because of our time, I thought I would just choose the ones I thought were most applicable to you. So this is the one that's simplest, the no cost whatsoever. It's your exemplar tips. So managers, you say, okay, Fred is really good at his paperwork. I want to find out, I want to have him share how he does that, and I'm going to give him 10 minutes at the next staff meeting to share how, what are his tips and techniques for getting his paperwork done so completely and on time. I'm just making something up. It's whatever it is. You could have each of your teams do a 10-minute best 10 tips on something you think they're the exemplar in. And you may even borrow people from other departments with that manager's approval, just 5 or 10 tips. So that doesn't, it could be at every staff meeting. You have someone else, give them time to prepare, don't put them on the spot. And so in terms of prep time, really there's none for you as the manager. There's 30 minutes to 2 hours for the staff person who's going to be delivering this little 10-minute talk. It doesn't, if they take 22 hours, that's really a long time. In fact, you could even tell them no PowerPoint so they don't have to spend time on that. Okay, so that's a really easy one that you could do, all of you could do starting next week. The second one is a book discussion. So you buy a book that's relevant to your team, and you have all the staff read it concurrently. So you assign, let's say, a chapter a month or a chapter a week, and then you have to create some questions, some discussion questions, and you spend 10 or 15 minutes at a staff meeting to discuss the relevancy, how you can apply those concepts to your team. And the cost is maybe $10 to $15 a person, depending on the book, and it'll take maybe an hour or a week, if that, to read the chapter and to create the discussion. So, and I would have maybe 15 minutes to a half an hour at your staff meeting to discuss it, depending on the interest of the book. So that's pretty darn low cost right there, book discussions. And I sometimes help my clients come up with some books to get them started, depending on what their needs are, what their focus is. Then you could have monthly manager-led discussions, and I've done this for a lot of my clients, where I prepare for the manager a discussion on a salient point. So something like, improving team communication. And so I prepare for them a kind of a script with some questions. It's not a training, it's a discussion. So there's questions, and the staff that answers the questions, and they get to see what are some of the roadblocks to their team communication and how could they be better, etc. And so that, if you do it yourself, costs really nothing, but no outlay of cost, but there's some time obviously to do it. And then if you hire someone like me, then obviously there's a cost to that. The next one is what we're doing now, teleseminars or webinars, which I think is great that you guys are all so familiar with this. And what's the cost? It's the cost of whatever the staff time for an hour and whatever it costs you to enroll. And then I encourage you to add a half an hour at the end if you're doing it as a group like some of you are, and discuss how to take some of the concepts and apply them to yourself. So you can look at YouTube videos as well during this time. You could have joint training with other departments or companies. I know some of you have small departments. So what about you say, we need more help on X, and if it's more of a people skills kind of thing, then partner with another group, and that cuts your costs significantly. And then monthly video lunch and learns, and that's where you could watch some YouTube video that's relevant, not cute cat ones. Let's try to avoid those. But something that's relevant. It could even be a 5 or 10 minute video, but it launches some interesting discussion. Or of course there are many providers that have longer, more training specific videos that you can rent. So Jeff, I'm ready now to hear how our people on the call are going to grow their people. And so if you want to log in the questions box, any ideas that you
be careful what you ask
that
for.
are useful to you. I'm sorry, what?
Be careful what you ask for.
Yes?
We got so many questions
Be
in the
careful
last
what
few
I ask
minutes.
for.
We're not going to be able to cover them all,
well,
but
great.
here we go.
Okay, good. We're ready for questions. You drive.
Okay. If you need to transfer someone, what's the best approach? The best way to approach that subject?
To transfer them, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's like anytime you're moving someone on, you have a discussion with them about if they are feeling that it's not a good fit as you're feeling, and talk to them about what they need to, what they would be happier at, and see where that conversation goes. Now, granted, some people are obtuse and they will not think that there's anything wrong. But if you've been doing your job as a manager and coaching them along the way that they're not performing to your expectations, this should not be a surprise. You need to have been. Go ahead.
I'm going to cut you off and keep going so we can get to as many as we can. Is that all right?
Go for it.
This is kind of long, but I think it's important. I'm working for an organization which faces tight budgets in the foreseeable future, and I think a lot do. The first thing that was cut are opportunities for professional development. How do I convince leaders that this is short-sighted, because I might end up losing my most motivated staff?
Well, could you have them watch this webinar, for one thing? Really, there is enough data out. Get that book that I mentioned, The First Break All the Rules, and you'll see, there's the data that shows that people who aren't being developed are more likely to leave, especially the best people. So arm yourself with some data before having that conversation.
Great. The current trend in business is to have fewer meetings. So how can a manager justify having less project team meetings and more training meetings?
Well, you could even, you could have shorter meetings. So and frankly, the issue with meetings usually is they are not well run, and so you have an hour meeting when you really could have done it in 20 minutes. So I think if you have more productive meetings and shorter meetings, then you will have, people won't be complaining about all the meetings.
Great. And let's do one more. What do you do if 80% of your staff have no desire to develop and the others, who may be interested, are too busy doing their job to do developmental activities?
Well, I don't know about the 80%. I think what's happened with a lot of people is they've just kind of gotten lackadaisical because they don't see the opportunities. But if you can rekindle their excitement about learning and growing, and then they're going to be excited about any learning opportunity, and then whatever you do provide is engaging, they're gonna shift a bit, I think.
Great. Want one more?
Sure.
Okay. What about those famous awards, Employee of the Year? I like this one, from management and trying to keep employees happy.
Well,
I like that one.
I don't know, Jeff. What do you think?
I never got Employee of the Year, so how would I know?
Well, I could give you Employee of the Year, and you could give me Employee of the Year, and we. I think it's motivating for the person who got it. I don't know what it does to the rest of the folks. Are they more demoralized for not getting it? I'm not sure. I haven't really done my research in that, so I probably shouldn't comment.
So, Rebecca, I do have about 4 people who have asked me, did I miss how to get the book? So maybe you can tell them.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Go to the RebeccaMorgan.com, which is on your screen, not my email, but go to the actual RebeccaMorgan.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, I believe it is, it says, get your free copy of Grow Your Key Talents.
Perfect.
It's on the top.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your insights. You can see if you're interested in contacting Rebecca directly, just email her at RebeccaMorgan.com. She's agreed, by the way, if we didn't get to your questions, please don't despair. She's agreed to get to your questions offline as soon as she can. And remember, like all of our speakers, Rebecca is an incredible speaker, trainer, consultant. Like all of our presenters, she's available to come into your organization to speak, train, and consult. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I'd like to thank our sponsor, without whom this webinar series would not be possible. Next month, mark your calendars for the first Wednesday of the month for Get Off the Employee Engagement Roller Coaster with professional speaker and author Vicki Hess. Please mark your calendars for Wednesday, September the 5th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Watch your email for more details. And again, as always, it's my honor and privilege to be your host. And until next month, this is Jeff Tobe urging you to color outside the lines.